So this tutorial is to help you understand Unit 1 Practice FRQ's terms of trade. So for question 1, we have a table of data about John and Erica making donuts and cupcakes. You can readily see right away that John is making more donuts and more cupcakes in a day's time than Erica is. So what we want to do with questions like these is we want to break down the data before we ever even look at what we're being asked. So the first thing I always look for, is this an input or an output question? This is an output question because we're looking at the total amount of output that these two people produced in one day. So when I look at this and I see 200 donuts for John versus 150 for Erica, I know that he has an absolute advantage in producing donuts. When I see that he has 100 cupcakes as opposed to her 50, I also see that he has an absolute advantage because he's just doing more per day. There's something about his ability to utilize the land, labor, and capital that he's able to produce more. The second thing that I notice is that we need to have these individuals divide and conquer. We know that specialization is going to lead to more total output in the long run. So who should do what? When I look at these numbers, I'm going to change my colors here. I see that we have been blessed with numbers that work well in terms of what I call leveling the playing field. So when I look at 200 to 100, I see that this simply could be 2 to 1. And then I also see that I can put the cupcakes in terms of 1 as well. Now I get to look at the cupcake column and see that they can be on a level playing field. They're both in terms of 1. And what that's going to do for me, it's going to be able to make me or allow me to compare John and Erica in a more realistic way. So for every 1 cupcake John made, we would lose 2 donuts. For every 1 cupcake Erica makes, we would lose 3 donuts. If she makes cupcakes, we're going to lose an additional donut for our production. So we don't want to have her make the cupcakes. The opportunity cost is too great. So we want Erica, and I'm going to highlight these in green, we want Erica to make the donuts, and therefore John is going to make the cupcakes. Now, Mr. Clifford teaches you this cross-multiply method that you can use. And you can also figure out that this is the diagonal pattern in the table by multiplying 1 times 3 equals 3, 2 times 1 equals 2. Which diagonal path ends up with a larger number? It's the green path that we just made. So now I know that Erica has got the comparative advantage in donuts, and therefore John has it in cupcakes. That's how I want to break down the data. Now let's look at the questions. Who has an absolute advantage in producing donuts? Well, it's John. John does because at the end of one day, he can produce more. That's my explanation. Who has a comparative advantage in producing donuts? Well, just because John can make more at the end of a day doesn't mean that he has the comparative advantage. We just looked at the ratios and we determined that Erica has the comparative advantage in donuts because if she didn't make them, the opportunity cost would be greater. Now, let's assume that John and Erica decided to specialize according to their comparative advantages. So we're going to use that green data. So that means Erica is going to make 3 donuts to every 1 cupcake that John makes. That's their deal, 3 donuts to 1 cupcake. What if a fairy godmother came down here and said, what if you did 1 cupcakes to 4? So I'm going to change my color here back to red. They kind of worded this in a funny way because in the table, we're looking donuts to cupcakes. And now in this question, they're doing cupcakes to donuts. So just make sure you put the ratios in the correct order. Somebody's coming down and they're saying, no, guys, what if you did this? What if you did 4 donuts to 1 cupcake? Would you be interested in that? John says, absolutely, I'd be interested in that because John still only has to make 1 cupcake and he's going to receive 4 in return because of this new deal. Erica looks at this and says, no, I would not be interested in this trade because now I have to make an additional donut. I have to make 4 instead of 3 and still get the same return, 1 cupcake. No way. I'm going to stick with what we were doing before. Lastly, we had to draw a production possibilities curve. And they give us specific directions on how to make our graph. We want to have donuts on the horizontal axis or the x-axis. We want to have cupcakes over here. And I'm just going to make a nice concave PPC right here showing the production. And it says that the production technique increases her production of cupcakes only. So we're going to extend the PPC higher on the cupcake line, and I'm going to make it intersect at the same place where it was before for the donuts, because nothing changed in her donut production. So that is question 1, John and Erica with the donuts and the cupcakes.